Welcome to this edition of CBN News Showcase. I'm Charlene Aaron. Some say American Christians are paranoid about feeling targeted and persecuted. But is there really a chance there is anti-Christian agenda? Paul Strand recently talked with several people who are in a good position to know.
Some of those on the front line of the culture wars say definitely there's an anti-Christian agenda. They feel it right in their face.
I'm particularly sensitive to that because I'm Jewish.
Brian Kamenker heads up the group and the website Mass Resistance.
I saw what happened to Jews in the 1930s and 1940s, and much of that same thing is happening to Christians now. There's an organized movement to demonize Christians.
What we're seeing very clearly is an effort to target them legally when possible, and then to humiliate or deprive them of social respect.
Much of this comes from abortion rights and gay rights groups and their allies.
They see Christianity as refusing to affirm the things that they want to indulge in.
Peter Sprigg is with the Family Research Council and Reverend Bill Owens with the Coalition of African American Pastors, both frequent targets of gay rights groups.
They cannot accept any moral code which says that what they do is wrong. And in order to avoid any sort of guilt that might come upon them, if anyone says that what they're doing is wrong, they want to eliminate that kind of communication from the culture altogether.
So there's a strong agenda to silence Christians. You see it every day. You can't walk out of your house and not see something anti-Christian.
Gay and transgender rights groups have very carefully mimicked the civil rights movement.
They have copied that movement, studied it, dissected it, and they knew exactly what to do. And one of the things they had to do was silence the Christian community.
These folks point out one reason for the gay rights movement to co-opt the civil rights movement is because of how modern society sees opponents of civil rights: narrow-minded, bigots, racists. They're hoping that their opponents will be seen through the same lens as narrow-minded bigots. And unfortunately, it's often Christians who are these modern-day opponents.
If you disagree, you're a bigot, a hater, a racist, right? So you put that together, and it's a pretty powerful agenda. I suspect it's the minority of the left who actually believes it, but powerful organized minorities often drive culture and politics in different ways.
There are millions and millions of dollars behind the anti-Christian movement. We didn't have that. It started out with little people giving 50 cents, $1, $2.
We often talk about this as a threat to religious liberty, and it is that. But if you really drill down, the religious liberty of Muslims and Jews and Hindus is not what's being attacked. It's the religious liberty of Christians.
And it's not over. I mean, now that they have gay marriage, they're doing their push for these severe anti-discrimination laws to punish Christians who don't go along with the agenda.
And it's not that these folks just want a moral neutrality. Their new laws push a new morality.
And the moral message they send is that it is morally wrong to disapprove of homosexual conduct.
The left's idea is that to be a good person, you have to believe that the only thing in the world which cannot be changed is sexual orientation.
They perceive Christianity as being a source of oppression. That's partly because they don't understand Christianity. They don't understand that Christ came to set us free, not to imprison us.
The problem now is that with the Supreme Court last year making gay marriage the law of the land, it supercharges the legal efforts that many Christians worry will more and more demonize the biblical beliefs they feel they must stand behind, and thus be demonized themselves. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
And now moving overseas, Muslim extremists have been rioting in Pakistan over the execution of an Islamic assassin. The government's hanging of convicted murderer Mumtaz Qadri once again places the spotlight on the country's blasphemy laws. Gary Lane has more.
In the Pakistani capital city of Islamabad, protesters shouted shame on Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. They burned tires and blocked streets, all in response to the government-ordered hanging death of assassin Mumtaz Qadri.
Mumtaz Hussain Qadri was our national hero. The government hanged him. That's why we blocked the main highway.
In January 2011, Qadri was hailed a hero by Muslim extremists for assassinating Punjab Governor Salman Taseer. Taseer was an outspoken critic of Pakistan's 295 blasphemy law. He supported efforts to free Asia Bibi, the Christian mother jailed in 2009 on charges she committed blasphemy against Muhammad. Bibi was convicted and sentenced to death. Although Pakistan's Supreme Court has overturned her execution, she is still imprisoned, awaiting a new trial or acquittal on the charges against her. Pakistan isn't the only country where blasphemy laws are often misused against Christians and others to settle disputes or to gain property.
We continue to see the negative impact, secondly, of blasphemy and apostasy laws in countries including Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan. Such laws have been used in some countries as a pretext to justify violence in the name of religion.
For now, the assassin of a reform-minded governor is dead, and Asia Bibi approaches nearly 7 years in prison. And Christians and moderate Muslims in Pakistan and elsewhere still wait for change to come. Gary Lane, CBN News.
In the late 20th century, an international boycott movement helped finally end South Africa's apartheid system. Today, Palestinians in the Middle East are gaining traction with a similar boycott campaign against Israel, even calling Israel an apartheid state. But is that a fair comparison? Many South Africans say no. One of them, Olga Mishu, spoke with CBN's Ephraim Graham. Take a look.
From 1948 to 1994, South Africa endured a rigid political system of racial segregation and discrimination against its black citizens. This system was called apartheid. Today, anti-Israel speakers are misusing the word apartheid to spread a lie that delegitimizes the state of Israel.
Brick by brick, wall by wall, Israeli apartheid has to fall.
Olga Meshua is a South African attorney and activist who says this characterization of Israel is false and makes a mockery of the struggle her parents and grandparents endured under apartheid.
When I hear that Israel is an apartheid state, when people make that accusation, depending on the mood that I'm in on the day, I either pack out laughing or I get really, really angry, because it's an absolute lie.
To counter that lie, Meshu travels the world speaking out in support of Israel. She's the CEO of DAISY, an acronym that stands for Defend, Embrace, Invest, Support Israel. Now, you saw apartheid in South Africa, and why do you say Israel is not an apartheid state? Enlighten people.
Because it isn't. I mean, if you have a look at the legislation that was implemented during apartheid South Africa, what black people were not allowed to do, we were not allowed to in any way, in any manner, interlink or intermingle with white people. We were segregated in terms of where we lived. We were segregated with regards to the schools that we went to. We couldn't enjoy public amenities such as the beach, going to movies, going to the mall. My parents tell stories as to how they couldn't even go to the same restaurant as their friends. In fact, even today, even though apartheid ended 22 years ago, we are still bearing the scars of how black people were oppressed in South Africa. We weren't given opportunities like other people were, particularly on the economic front. You go to Israel. On the bus, Jews sitting next to non-Jews. In the Knesset, Jews with non-Jews. Arabs are there. There is intermingling. People go to the same schools. If you want to speak, if you can speak Hebrew, you know, you can go there, and it's nothing that discriminates you with regards to your religion or the way that you look. And so it's actually wicked and it's a mockery to call something that isn't an apartheid state an apartheid state, even more so when Israel is pretty much the only true democratic state in the Middle East. I mean, it's an absolute lie.
Yeah, painful to see. Your thoughts on this move to boycott Israel?
Yeah. People need to understand what the true agenda is with regards to boycotting Israel. I many times challenge people and say, okay, if they really are interested in the well-being of Palestinians, because they say, we need to boycott Israel so that the Palestinians can be free. But I ask you, what in fact are they doing for the Palestinians? We see so much money being poured into organizations such as the BDS, predominantly in my country, and frankly, a lot of organizations in Israel and as well as in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And you then say, all right, how is that actually finding itself to the Palestinians? It's not. So they've got an agenda, and pretty much to be blunt, that agenda is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and we're not allowed to, or rather, we're not prepared to see that happen, and that's why we're standing up.
Indeed, indeed. Now, you've been to Israel, I think, 3 times?
3 times.
3 times. When you are there, what do you see in terms of minority groups and how they're being treated?
We see them being treated equally. We don't see Israel as a perfect place, but show me any nation in this world that's a perfect place. Yeah. She struggles with some of her policies. One thing that people also need to distinguish between is the government of Israel at the time and Israel as a state. There may be policies, there may be decisions that we don't necessarily agree with, that the Israeli government is doing, but that applies to every place across the world, including in my own country. So what we see in Israel and our interactions with people in Israel, the minority groups, is that they love that country, they are privileged and they are proud to be associated with that country. In fact, many a times when you tell them about the BDS, they think that it's a tool by Israel that's been implemented to make their lives more of a misery. They don't see it as a liberation movement to free them.
So, your organization is called Daisy. Tell me, what is your organization trying to do? What do you want to do?
Well, we want to create platforms, and that's what we do, platforms of education, so that people can be presented with the facts to make a decision for themselves. We watch the media, not CBN, but we watch the media, we read telephone, we read newspapers, and there's this wicked bias with regards to just spreading lies about Israel. And so we want to help people see Israel for themselves to make their own conclusion. But also we as South Africans primarily, and black South Africans also, we want to educate people as to what we struggled through as a nation during apartheid, and then be able to say, listen, guys, we went through apartheid. You're seeing what Israel's about. We're giving you facts as to what Israel's about. Make your own decision and don't be so gullible and deceived by what the nations of the world are saying.
Indeed. Now, you are here visiting Regent University and on this campus. Tell us about your work here.
So the BDS, unfortunately, seems to have gotten quite a strong hold on the university campuses. And so our work as Daisy International in the US, at least at this point in time, is twofold. One is to remind the Jewish community that they have friends in South Africa and across the world who are standing with them and who are supporting them. But secondly is also to raise an awareness of students on university campuses. University campuses are a place of learning. They're a place of getting information, that they should be using those institutions to learn and to gather information, and not just to be, with respect, puppets that are being used for a cause that actually doesn't exist. So how do we help them to see the role that they can play on university campuses with regards to coming against what BDS is doing?
Beautiful. Olga Meshwa, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate your time. You can find more information about Olga's organization, Daisy, and her efforts to help Israel at our website. It's cbnnews.com.
A recent outbreak of the Zika virus in Latin America has caused officials to declare an international health emergency. The virus causes brain damage in babies and may also lead to severe neurological disorders. Operation Blessing is on the scene in Latin America using a unique approach to prevent the virus from spreading. Gary Lane has that story.
Health workers in Lima, Peru fumigate classrooms in hopes of preventing the spread of the deadly Zika virus. But insecticide spraying and mosquito nets, for the most part, have proven ineffective in stopping the mosquito called Aedes aegypti that spreads the Zika virus. Operation Blessing International President Bill Horan explains that it has to do when the mosquitoes are active.
Mosquito bed nets are not as effective for these mosquitoes as they were for most, because the Aedes aegypti sleeps at night. They don't bite very often at night. These mosquitoes are especially active right at dawn for about 2 hours and just before dark for about 2 hours.
Based on Operation Blessing's experience in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, Horan came up with a unique solution. OB is distributing mosquito-eating fish, like the indigenous sambo fish in El Salvador.
And we are using them, we're distributing them, and we're helping to support a woman who is raising them down there. But in Mexico now, we have the okay right from the cabinet level of the Mexican government to use gambusia that are found locally in Mexico to eat mosquito larvae.
OB is working in the Acapulco area and soon in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula near Cancun. And on location in El Salvador, Operation Blessing's Tony Cece explains how the project works there.
They're putting the fish into their sinks and into containers like this. Now this one's being used to store the sambo fish, but in homes they use it to store water. And one of the problems is that these are a breeding ground for the Aedes aegypti larvae, which become the mosquitoes that carry the viruses like chikungunya and dengue, and now Zika.
The Zika virus has been linked to brain damage in babies and paralysis in others. OB workers are raising awareness.
Well, you've always said, Bill, that educating the public is crucial.
How are you doing that? What do they need to know that they don't know at this point?
Gary, we've learned in other outbreaks of epidemics like cholera, Ebola, that awareness, making the public aware, especially the poor who don't have access maybe to television the way that we do or the internet. We have our teams out making people aware of this Zika, what it is, and how they can fight it themselves.
And Operation Blessing's efforts aren't limited to El Salvador and Mexico. Horan met with Ana Hernandez, the First Lady of Honduras, to get her blessing to start a mosquito-eating fish project in that Central American country.
We're doing a great service. We're saving lives. We're eliminating suffering, and we're going after this disease at its source. But wherever this Zika goes, Operation Blessing is going to go also.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Nearly 2 million people will be diagnosed with cancer this year, but now there's a promising new treatment, and it has a name that sounds like something out of a science fiction movie: proton therapy. Lori Johnson has that story.
Jeff Powell and his wife Vicki believe they dodged not one, but 2 bullets. First, Jeff beat prostate cancer. Plus, because he chose the treatment known as proton therapy, he avoided the miserable side effects that often accompany traditional methods.
I had looked at surgery, and I had talked to some friends at a local prostate meeting who had it, and they had a lot of trouble with incontinence and sexual malfunction. And at my age, I just didn't want to live like that.
Proton therapy patients have fewer side effects because it only kills the cancer. Traditional radiation therapy works like a bullet, damaging healthy tissue as it enters and exits the body. Proton therapy, on the other hand, is like a firecracker placed inside the tumor. The explosion of radiation damages just the tumor, nothing else. There's no nausea, no burning, and best of all, no organ damage.
Everything that worked when I started my treatment works fine now.
There are only 9 proton therapy centers in all of the United States right now, but another 8 are on the way.
One of the newest treatment facilities is this one in Hampton, Virginia. This location was chosen in part because this area of the country leads the nation in prostate cancer deaths.
I'm halfway through the therapy now, the treatment right now, and it's been a pretty good experience.
45-year-old Craig Fieldings chose proton therapy to treat his prostate cancer. He's come here Monday through Friday for 1 month and has 1 more to go. The cost of proton therapy is about 3 times the cost of traditional treatment, but most insurers, like Craig's, cover the treatment.
It's a painless process. There's really nothing to it. I'm in and out in without 15 minutes, and I can go back to work.
Prostate cancer patients like Craig aren't the only ones who benefit from this breakthrough, according to the center's scientific director, Cynthia Keppel.
We treat a lot of prostate cancer, but we also treat a lot of brain, head and neck. We've treated breast, lung, esophageal. We're looking at pancreatic. We're looking at other kinds of gynecological. It's also important for pediatric patients because kids have a higher probability of getting a tumor from stray radiation associated with more conventional radiation therapy.
The precision also allows the proton beam to conform to the exact shape of the tumor. Some cancers have up to a 40% better cure rate than traditional treatment.
Because we're not generally delivering dose to surrounding tissue, you can raise up the dose to the tumor in some cases. That's where you're going to have a probable higher success rate. So some of the head and neck cancers are very much like that. For other cancers, like our prostate cancer patients, the cure rates are comparable to other treatments, but what we're really trying to do is give them a better quality of life afterwards.
During treatment, the patient lies in a custom-fitted brace on a machine called a gantry. In an adjoining room, technicians activate the proton beam. No needles, no knives.
This is a behind-the-scenes look at the gantry treatment room. The patient is on the other side of that wall. This machine is 3 stories tall, weighs 90 tons, and costs $8 million.
So this is physics.
Oncologist Alan Thornton has been using proton therapy since the early 90s.
This is a resource to the community and to the nation. It builds upon over 50 years of this therapy, first commencing in Sweden in 1957 and Harvard in 1961. There are many, many generations of physicists and physicians that have worked tirelessly to bring this technology to its current fruition.
That work means an answer to prayer for cancer patients who qualify for proton therapy. They can expect to keep more healthy tissue while escaping certain side effects associated with conventional therapy.
Now that it's over, if I had to do that again, hands down, that would be the way I would go.
Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Before we close, here's something to think about. Obesity could cause even more problems than serious issues like heart disease and diabetes. It could also lead to memory problems. A study from England found that obese people had a harder time forming memories and may not remember specific events as well. The researchers believe that not remembering how much you ate recent meals as well as you should could also lead to more overeating and still more weight gain. So we need to pay attention to that and do better. Well, that's all for this edition of the CBN News Showcase. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com and stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a wonderful day and God bless.